So they have to get a separate area. And that's how Pakistan was created. But once you create Pakistan, of which now Bangladesh has gone alone, has gone separate, then the same Muslims come back to your country and start living with Hindus. Then I think in the proportion in which they have come, we must get the land also back, because after all it's all Indian land. I would say that the impact of corruption is an extraordinarily serious dimension now, and we have to fight it now. We are very fortunate that today we have a leadership with the Chief Justice, Justice Kapadia, who has made it known to all judges that you must help in the fight against corruption. It's a pity that the Prime Minister should be taking the lead. But the Prime Minister, you see, he may be personally honest, but he is watching all this. Lord Krishna says in Mahabharata to Arjuna, in the Gita, when the war is going on and Arjuna hesitates about shooting the arrow on Bhishmacharya, he says he may be a great scholar, he may be a teacher, but he violated the fundamental moral law when he saw Draupadi being stripped and he did nothing about it. So Mr. Prime Minister may be personally honest, but that doesn't absolve him. When I first wanted permission, I wrote to the PM, please give me permission to prosecute Raja. No reply. Then I wrote him another letter with more information. No reply. Then I wrote him 3 more letters, 5 letters. No reply. So I went to the court and said, this Prime Minister is non-functioning. So under the Constitution, I have a right to ask the court to give me permission to prosecute Raja. The court was very angry, and they issued a notice to the Prime Minister to file an affidavit. In the history of the world, it's the first time the Prime Minister has been asked to file an affidavit in a court. When you ask somebody to file an affidavit in court, then it means that you don't trust his words. So therefore you want it on an affidavit. That means you swear the ceremony, the statement. There was a clamor for his resignation. But I saved him by saying, no, he doesn't have to resign. Because he doesn't know the law. And there is how he can give sanction when he has to take a sanction from Sonia Gandhi in the first place. And what is the use of removing it? Do you think you will get a better person? You will get some Buddhu who will be even bigger rubber stamp, or maybe even a bigger crook. So there is no point either, if you are in the opposition, you fight to remove the government, you don't fight to remove individuals. So therefore, the Prime Minister can remain till we reach a situation where the people decide that we need a new government. So the Supreme Court has since then done a number of wonderful things. They have said to the CBI, you will not be any more guided by the government on this issue. You will listen only to us. And of course I am there, so I can make petitions. I can tell the court, please do this, please ask them to do this. That the daughter of another very important minister from Maharashtra, she is also in trouble. Well, all of you know. So how many ministers are going to go? I would think there will be 7 or 8 ministers of the government who will be in jail. This is unprecedented for India. Because India, an atmosphere had come, nothing will happen. The corrupt people were spreading this. Nothing will happen in India. The laws are not sufficient. They should be made strong. Anna Hazare's contribution, however, is one which I would commend here today. Only one clause in this entire Jan Lokpal bill is worthy. Otherwise, with the present laws, I am getting action anyway. I must say that the Supreme Court has selected a judge as a trial court judge, and this trial court judge is as tough as they come. Of course, he has a problem because there are so many accused. There are 23 accused already, and all of them are billionaires. And they can afford lawyers, the best quality lawyers. They usually come with 5 lawyers each. So 23 times 5 is almost 100 lawyers are breathing down the neck of the judge, you see. And poor chap, but he's held ground. Those who thought that India is a weak country should see the kinds of changes that have come. I myself, people ask me, how did you get all these documents? Well, you'll be surprised how I got these documents. One day at 9:30 in the night, the doorbell rang, I opened it, and there was a well-dressed youngish man. He said, my name is Achari, Ashirvadam Achari, and I would like to talk to you. So I said, where do you work? He said, I'm private secretary to the Minister of Telecom, Mr. Raja. Oh. So I said, aren't you doing a very dangerous thing by coming to me? He said, no, I've come because my conscience has pricked me. And so I invited him in, and he told me all that had happened. And he provided the documents too. And later on, he appeared before the magistrate and recorded a statement. But for him, this case would have come this far. Now, I never knew that such people exist, and he is not just an ordinary stenographer or anything. He is a private secretary, he is an official rank. Private assistant is a stenographer. But private secretary to minister is an IAS officer. And here he staked his entire career and came to me and told me the whole thing, and then the CBI was informed. And then they took charge, and he laid the foundation for the prosecution in this matter. Then there's a journalist who's extremely poor. I mean, it means he's not starving, but he works for the pioneer called J. Gopi Krishnan. His was a relentless research that came in the paper day after day, despite all the threats he received. He continued. So there are people like that. There are judges like Justice Singhvi and Justice Ganguly who are not afraid of anybody. And as a consequence today, I can say that if this 2G spectrum scandal goes to its logical conclusion, we'll have a new dawn in India. India was not a corrupt country 400, 500 years ago. There are reports of foreigners who came to India like Vasco da Gama, Farsian from China, Mark Twain from America. One thing they all say, Indians are very honest people. They don't even lock their houses when they go out. What has happened? The process of corruption started with Jawaharlal Nehru's wrong choice of policy of adopting the Russian-Soviet Union's economic model, which meant government control of everything, licenses and quotas. Soon the licenses and quotas began to be sold in the black market. Soon emerged a bunch of touts, and they then became rich, but they ensured that the industrialists in the private sector got the licenses. That's how corruption started after 1947. In 1991, I was a minister at that time, Commerce Minister. I prepared the blueprints for economic reforms. Manmohan Singh, before I became minister, was in Geneva. He was in some UN commission. He had left the country. I phoned him up and asked him to return. And he came and became our government's economic advisor. Montek Singh was my commerce secretary. The three of us sat together and prepared the blueprints. But then the Chandrasekhar government fell and Mr. Narasimha Rao came. And Mr. Narasimha Rao, in my opinion, deserves the full credit for the political sagacity in implementing the economic reform. I prepared the blueprints, Narasimha Rao implemented, but the credit went to Manmohan Singh. As finance minister, he brought all these reforms, but as prime minister, he can't bring anything. That cannot be. The nation needs to correct it. Sonia Gandhi never liked Narasimha Rao because when he became prime minister, he had had 3 severe heart attacks. And he looked like a man who was about to die. He was made prime minister probably with Sonia Gandhi's expectation that he will die in 6 months. But after he became prime minister, health started improving. And he lasted full 5 years. He was defeated in the election despite bringing a major economic change in our country from less than 3% growth rate to almost 8% growth rate. And he died a completely discredited person by his own party. Some future government will have to rectify that. But people say that because of these economic reforms, there is more corruption today. Not because of economic reforms. Because the economy is booming. And if the economy is booming, if you go by percentage terms and look at it in absolute terms, of course, the numbers are going to be large. Telecom has grown out of zero to something huge today. And so therefore a cut on that is bound to be huge. You have 1,76,000 crores lost. Of that, 60,000 was distributed as bribe. Raja got only 3,000 crores. Only 3,000 crores. Chidambam got 5,000. Karunanidhi got 18,000, 16,000 crores. And after all, you know, he's got 3 wives, so he has to have a little. And Sonia Gandhi got 36,000 crores. Raja once told me in Parliament House, we met, he said, why are you troubling me like this? I have settled with everybody. Nothing will happen. I'd like to see him now. One day maybe I'll go and visit him in jail and say, what has happened? But this is the way corruption has been functioning. Everybody has been looked after. Opposition leaders have been looked after. They won't raise any questions. Nobody went to court. I went to court. There's so many lawyers in the opposition. They only do walkout, giving statements. Because there is an understanding. And that understanding continues whether the opposition is in power, comes to power, or that we have to change. Now, therefore, I would ask a question. Now, first of all, let me say that on the 2G thing, I will not let go because I have sunk my teeth into it. I filed another petition and argued before coming, and orders have been reserved, to cancel all the licenses and auction them afresh. Orders have been reserved, and any day the judgment will come. If that happens, it will be a big thing. On money trail, the Supreme Court has got so angry. You explain to me, why should they get angry? Germany found that some of its officials are putting money illegally in Liechtenstein Bank. And they decided that this is unacceptable. So what they did was their German intelligence bribed a senior official of the Liechtenstein bank to give a CD of all the illegal bank accounts, or numbered accounts as they are called, not illegal, they're called numbered accounts, of all the numbered accounts with their names for a payment of only $5 million. So that official gave it. Germany then separated them by countries. And they found that these large number of names were from 42 countries in a small place like Liechtenstein. Imagine what it must be like in Switzerland. And India had 16 names. So they wrote to all the governments, we've got your nationals, records of your nationals who have got illegal bank accounts in Liechtenstein. If you want, we'll send it to you. 41 countries immediately wrote, please send it back, send it to us. But India was the only country which didn't reply. Then some of us created a halla-gulla, so Prime Minister wrote a letter. Now that names have come. They wouldn't make it public. So some people went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, give us the list. They said, no, we will not give you the list. Or we'll conduct an inquiry. Who got how much? Won't do that. So in disgust, the Supreme Court said, all right, then we are setting up an inquiry committee, Special Investigation Team, SIT, under the chairmanship of a retired but very honest judge called Jeevan Reddy. And they will investigate. Now the court is saying the government is filing a new petition, review petition, saying, no, you are usurping our powers. The Constitution has said very clearly, Ambedkar in his speech in the Constituent Assembly has said, when the government fails to do its duty, that time the courts have a right to intervene and substitute for the government. And that's what happened for sanction also. I asked for sanction, Prime Minister didn't reply, went to court, court gave me sanction. So therefore, they are now filing a review petition because they are so scared of the names coming out. Then there was one man who was a scrap collector. Well, in this country he may be called garbage collector, but in India we have a more respectable term, scrap collector, called Hassan Ali. And he had an account of $81 billion. $81 billion. Excuse me, not it, $8.1 billion, right. $8.1 billion. Now how could a scrap collector have an account of $8 billion? This was nobody, this is an ordinary income tax officer found out by a raid in Hassan Ali's house. And then he informed the finance ministry officials informed Mr. Chidambaram. Mr. Chidambaram's greed was stoked. So he sent word to Hassan Ali, you share 50-50 and I'll let you go. Hassan Ali couldn't share, for reasons I'll explain in a minute. So Chidambaram thought this man is misbehaving. So he wrote a letter to Swiss authorities. We in our income tax raid have found such and such Swiss bank accounts in such and such bank of bank number so and so. Kindly confirm it and send us the documents. So Switzerland sent it to their courts and the courts gave direction, gave them the documents, and those documents were given. Meantime, Chidambaram was shifted to Home Ministry. Maybe because of this. They say it was 2611, I don't know. And Pranab Mukherjee came in as finance minister. The first letter he wrote to the Swiss government is, my predecessor wrote a letter in which he gave the bank accounts and their numbers. Unfortunately, there was an error in the numbers given. So I'm supplying you fresh numbers of the bank accounts. They're all bogus numbers. So Switzerland immediately said, oh, no such accounts exist. and they defroze this man's account. Within 3 days, that $8.1 billion was cleared out. But Mr. Hassan Ali was in custody. How did he clear out? This means that Hassan Ali opened the account, but the password was with somebody else. So this is a new technique. Open an account in somebody else's name, and the password will be with somebody else. Now this time, recently, they found that number of accounts were given to us by Switzerland, and there was Shailesh Gandhi, Praveen Gandhi, all Gandhis. And all of them were, when the press correspondents went to these Gandhis, they were all very ordinary people. They could not have an account in Switzerland. And they also didn't, they were shocked. How come our name came? So obviously some Gandhi has got the password and put it all in these names. Of course, there are other difficulties. Sonia Gandhi's sisters are still Italians, citizens. Sonia Gandhi herself is, but I have not yet got the records. If you NRIs want to know what you can do to help the fight against corruption, please go to Italy and get those records, or employ a private detective to go to Italy. You have the resources, you've got the capacity, and you've got the reach. We in India who are fighting corruption would like only information. The Americans have a lot of information, but they're not sharing. The American Fort Meade, you see, near Washington, that has a computer which records every bank transaction in India, in the world. And they have buzzwords. So, supposing it says something, says Osama bin Laden, immediately it will give you a printout. So, all the data is there with the Americans. But the Americans, why should they cooperate with you? The Americans are not going to cooperate on merit. It has to be a give and take. They think that the Indians are not serious. And they are not serious. They can't be serious. Because all of them have accounts. If I had an account by now, they would have sent me to jail. But I don't have. That's why only fakirs can fight India, fight corruption in India. That's why we need Ramdev, we need Anna Hazare, such types of people who the whole world knows don't have anything. They may try anything, but nothing gets stuck. Nothing can be pinned on them. So I am saying that this amount of money, how much is abroad? Some say $500 billion, some say $1.5 trillion. But one of my Harvard students became a chairman of one of the Swiss banks, and he told me, but for Indians, our bank would have financially collapsed a long time ago. I said, why? Because they bring so many accounts. He said, no. They come, they are so insecure, they don't even leave a beneficiary name, and they die and the money becomes ours. That's how it's. So in this situation, we can correct corruption at all levels. There was a time there was so much corruption in railway reservations. Once the railway reservations became computerized, all corruption in that is gone. It used to be a great harassment. Every ticket conductor had to be cajoled, given money to give you a reservation, or the ticket clerk at the counter. But today there's none of that. In fact, you can get on your mobile whether what is your waiting time and when will it be confirmed, or if it is confirmed, you will get a SMS alert. So that has happened. There are areas which were used to be corrupt in India are now clean. Now the real place where corruption has to be cleaned is at this top level. The other things will automatically get cleaned up by example. You see, one of the things is, in the short run, to cure corruption, you can have laws, but they must be enforced. On 7th January 2008, there were two press conferences which came one after the other. One was a press conference in Hyderabad addressed by Ramalinga Raju of Satyam. He said, I have done fraud with my accounts and I have salted away 7,500 crores. I am ready to face any punishment. And I hereby resign from the chairmanship of Satyam. That's a confession. Around the same time in New York, a gentleman by the name Bernard Madoff held a press conference saying that I have sinned because I have defalcated pension funds in Ponzi schemes. I am ready to face any punishment. I am ready to accept any punishment as an atonement. Within 6 months, Bernard Madoff was convicted in prison for 150 years. 6 months. But Ramalinga Raju is still lying in the air-conditioned room of Apollo Hospital in Hyderabad. No charge sheet yet. This is one of the things that we need to correct. Anna Hazare is right in saying that country needs a change in law. The one thing that I accept in what he says is correct. We need an independent public prosecutor. Hong Kong was the most corrupt country of East of Asia. Once that independent public prosecutor was appointed, within 10 years Hong Kong has become the cleanest country now in the Transparency International, right at the top. Here also, when President Clinton on that Monica Lewinsky case, America appoints an independent prosecutor on an ad hoc basis. Watergate, they appointed a public prosecutor, independent public prosecutor. India too, we can have, and I'm testing the law already, even without Anna Hazare's proposed amendment. He is proposing a general amendment, but I'm saying in corruption law, we can have an independent public prosecutor because I had gone to court asking the court, that is the trial court, not the Supreme Court, the trial court, please appoint me as an independent public prosecutor. So the court said, how can we? The CRPC says that only government lawyers can be appointed public prosecutors. So I said, yes, that is in the CRPC. But the Prevention of Corruption Act, that says that you can appoint an independent public prosecutor. He said, read it out to me. So I read section 5. It says that the person who files the private complaint under the Prevention of Corruption Act can be appointed as an independent public prosecutor under the law. And the judge tells me, I never knew this law existed. But I don't blame him because nobody had brought it to his attention. And most people don't know the law. The law is now, I think it now has become, society has become so complex. I think our educational system should now start teaching law as a required subject so that everybody knows some law and they're not terrified by law. In the short run, yes, we need to tighten the laws, particularly this independent public prosecutor, and 1 or 2 people go to jail. It has a very salutary effect. But long run, it's not so simple, because people will then start finding other ways of being corrupt. And that, we must understand the root of corruption then. It's my last thing that I want to say to you. What is the root of corruption? It's greed. To make more money. Why you want to make more money? Because that's what gives you social status. Of course it affords you a lot of amenities, but that, you don't need all that money. But this money, for more and more money, to throw around money, that's a search for social status. Our society, Hindu society, what is called a Sanatana Dharma, has understood this from the very beginning. When 2 great rishis met to discuss how to structure society. One was Rishi Bhrigu and the other was Rishi Bhardwaj. They met to discuss how to structure society so it's stable. So Rishi Bhrigu said, there are 4 sources of power in a society, and we must ensure that nobody has more than one of that. What are the 4 sources? Knowledge, weapons, second, wealth, third, land, fourth. These should not be in one hand. Not even 2 should be in one hand. So those who have knowledge will not have weapons, will not have wealth, will not have land. And they will be venerated the most. Those who have weapons will rule the country, but they cannot make policy. They can't decide when to go to war. They cannot give punishment under the law for criminals. In other countries of Europe where the kings were there, they were the authority for declaring war, authority for giving punishment. So that was monarchy. Ours was not a monarchy, because they had to go to the people with the knowledge to seek their permission, seek their advice. Those who had wealth were certainly, they had a right to make wealth, but their social status will depend on how much philanthropy they do. And those who had land would have to produce for the society. Those who were pushed out of society, there were very few those days. It all happened after these invasions that these numbers grew.